Today is a very sad day in America. This is KF&JF podcast. Today we're going to spend some time just listening to the indictment of Donald Trump. Today is June 8th, 2023. Well, you know what? I'm going to change that. It's June 9th, 2023. Yesterday was the indictment. Today we're going to listen to all of the difference of opinion in regards to that. And I know that the prosecutor in this case is due to talk in about 20 minutes, if not less. And I want us to be able to hear him through. Because one of the things that we need to understand as we listen to this, as I let the day just play out, is that we have to have understanding. We need to understand. And the way to do that is to clear up all of the misunderstanding on both sides. And to make sure that we as Americans, as citizens, understand exactly what it is that we're going through. And the day being the 9th, I'm kind of sad about it. I have my different views about Trump. I have my different views about the misunderstanding that's out there and how we have allowed people to capitalize on that and change who we are and set forth a time where we just don't really have any idea of how to make these things better. But I want to be able to talk to you guys about just listening. And that brings up clarity. And clarity is where we are today. We're going to get a clarity from the people involved. And we're going to hear some different opinions about how this case and this indictment against Trump is going forward. Because I printed it out, ladies and gentlemen, 49 pages, that I'm going to read it. I'm going to sit back um, and read this so that I can get an understanding of what was the reasoning for the Justice Department following this indictment. But at the same time, we also have to be able to see outside of this indictment what the people think, how the people are reacting, what the political parties are thinking, how they're seeing this, and what misunderstanding do they have? Because we got to remember that the prosecutor in this case has been pretty slick and secretive. He really didn't let everybody know. He wasn't out there talking about everything. So we got to respect that. Okay. And then we have to listen to Trump, who's been out there talking. And he's been explicit about how he feels, what he thinks, and what he felt was his reasoning for everything he's done. So putting those two things together to understand how we've gotten to this indictment through Jack Smith. For the first time in our history, a president or a former president will be charged with felonies through the federal government, one that he led for 4 years and was able to understand the whole workings of the United States justice system, political system, and to be charged with this at such a late age. And some of it we just need to truly understand. What was he thinking? And can we really justify it? Or do we think there is a justification in what he did? So that brings us to understanding. So I'm just going to allow the day to go by from what I'm listening to. Right now, I'm listening to, I guess, some breaking news that's coming through as to what's been going on lately. And I guess the Jack Smith will be speaking soon. So I'm just going to let these things play out. And let's listen in on a couple of things.
Bravado wants to show you the things he has. Come here, let me show you something I've showed nobody else. I think that's part of it. I mean, you're right. Pierre used the word trophies. I can't think of a better one, because at the end of the day, if you have a trophy, what do you want to do? You want to tell everybody you have a trophy, and clearly that's what Donald Trump did in the form of documents.
And eventually all those trophies end up in a box somewhere being saved for decades to come until other people come upon them, which leads us to the possible national security threat here that everyone's been talking about and concerned about. And Sarah Isker, your former DOJ, what do you make? You worked in the Trump White House. As you are hearing these details and you're seeing these pictures and you're parsing through the indictment, what are your first thoughts?
First thoughts is this is what a speaking indictment is supposed to look like. I think when we all saw the New York indictment from Alvin Bragg, that was a hot mess, frankly, of what an indictment could be. The theory wasn't quite there. There wasn't sure what the evidence was to back up that theory. Here you have the Department of Justice, not surprisingly, laying out the theory of the case, the evidence overwhelming on that theory, and then laying out the charges. Jack Smith, as others have said, has prosecuted people from both political parties. He's known for being a total pit bull. He gets his guy, and he doesn't care who it is, how powerful that person is. And that's what you're seeing, I think, really come through in this indictment. He's got the goods. He's presenting the goods. End of story.
Rachel Scott, our chief congressional correspondent out on in Iowa, I am told, of course, on the campaign trail. It's Rachel. You sort of forget we're in the middle of campaign time now. Everybody's announcing that they're running for the presidency, and here we are once again talking about the former president now being indicted for the second time, this time on federal charges. But he is also the front runner within the GOP pool of those who want to be president of the United States. He wants to be president again, as now he's dealing with a second indictment. How is this playing out in Iowa, a crucial state during campaign time? What are voters telling you?
Yeah, it is certainly interesting, the timing of all of this. It is unprecedented. This is something that we have never seen before. We are in the middle of a campaign cycle, and Donald Trump is not only the candidate, he's the front runner. He is leading the pack. So far, when it comes to his rivals, they are walking a very fine line. Many of them are doing what Donald Trump is doing himself right now, and they are reading through this indictment and trying to figure out what they are going to say and how they're going to address this on the campaign trail. Leading up to this, you had former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie tell me that he believes that no one is above the rule of law, but that he wanted to know the facts before commenting further. You had former Vice President Mike Pence saying that an indictment would further divide the country. He says it's premature at this point to call on Trump to suspend his campaign. But for Americans that are watching this play out and wondering, what does this mean for the 2024 election? One thing is clear. Donald Trump can still continue his third bid for the White House. In fact, he's fundraising off of this indictment. His advisors tell me he's still moving forward with his campaign events. But one thing that can change is the reaction. And that is one thing that we are waiting to see. How does this settle with the Republican base, with the voters who will decide who is the nominee in the Republican Party? And how will this settle with Trump's rivals, who so far have been very reluctant to criticize him when it comes to these multiple investigations that he's facing, Kira?
Rachel, thank you, which leads me to our senior national correspondent, Terry Moran, also my co-anchor here on ABC News Live. My jaw drops when I listen to our congressional correspondent Rachel Scott say he is fundraising off this indictment? I mean, think about that. Think about what she just said, Terry. Fundraising off an indictment.
Well, of course he is. And there's that great word heard so often in certain neighborhoods in New York, chutzpah, right? I mean, that's Donald Trump all over. He is a brazen politician. It's one of the reasons people love him, because they feel in his brazenness that he is bold enough and contemptuous enough of the way things have been done to represent their interests. That said, this is a devastating indictment, as everyone has said, and because, in part, of that Trump personality. If you read this indictment, essentially looking for insight into the defendant, right? This person who the jury is going to be asked to convict. Yes, he's the former president, but they're going to be asked to convict a man, Donald Trump. And they're going to want to understand what makes him tick. This speaking indictment, as it's been described, never speaks about motive, about why Trump did all this. That question is left unanswered, hanging in the air over all of these alleged crimes. What it does talk about, though, is his personality in the alleged committing of these crimes. You hear the authentic Trump voice, for example, when he's telling his lawyer, as you've heard, wouldn't it be better if we told them we just don't have anything here? Well, look, isn't it better if there are no documents? You can hear the kind of conniving, that's his own lawyer, who contemporaneously wrote those words down after the meeting, concerned, I think, about self-preservation, hearing somebody essentially discuss the possibility of committing crimes. So they do offer a portrait of Donald Trump trying to get away with as much as he can, squares and tracks with what a lot of Americans understand about him, but they don't get, why did he keep them? Why did he take all these top secret documents, some of them devastating to the interests of the United States? There is not a whisper in this indictment that he wanted to use them for his own benefit, financially or otherwise. They would have certainly included such evidence. So why? Ego? Showing off to people like the writer who was in his office and he starts waving around the American battle plans for the invasion of Iraq? Iran, I should say, Iran. Hard to keep him straight. The picture of Donald Trump is chaotic, as so much of his life has apparently been. It is conniving in the description of the prosecutor. What it is not is explanatory. Why would someone do this?
And we may never know. But as we've been discussing, various words, bragging rights, trophies, schmoozing, impressing. He likes to do that. He likes to do that. And think of how many times he's been interviewed for articles, for books. He invites people in. He says things. They turn against him and it doesn't bother him. He just keeps moving along. And Terry, he's still popular. He's the front runner out of all the Republican candidates right now for the race to the White House. What do you think that says about just the mindset of voters right now? Do you think this could actually turn things around? Or is this going to be Trump as how we've known him, how we've watched him, and how he continues?
That depends, Kira, on the way the case progresses. This is a very damning indictment. It's the prosecutor's opening round, as it were, the best presentation of the case before the evidence itself comes into court. So this is part of that process, but it's really going to be how the trial takes place. There are no cameras in most federal trials. I doubt there will be one in this one. I almost wish there were, though, because the country needs to have confidence in this case, in the judge who tries it, in the jurors who decide it, in the lawyers who stand before them presenting the evidence and the arguments. They really need confidence, however it ends up, that it has been done according to the best traditions and ideals of American justice. And what it says about the country, look, Donald Trump has been the dominant political figure in the United States since he came down that elevator. He changed American politics. He ignited a populist nationalist movement that is his and will remain with him until and beyond. his time on this earth. There's no question about it. He changed American politics, and that's why people stick with him. They believe that he was the leader they could follow to a better life, a better America.
Good afternoon.
Let's listen to the
Today,
special
an
counsel.
indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with felony violations of our national security laws, as well as participating in a conspiracy to obstruct justice. This indictment was voted by a grand jury of citizens in the Southern District of Florida, and I invite everyone to read it in full to understand the scope and the gravity of the crimes charged. The men and women of the United States intelligence community and our armed forces dedicate their lives to protecting our nation and its people. Our laws that protect national defense information are critical to the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced. Violations of those laws put our country at risk. Adherence to the rule of law is a bedrock principle of the Department of Justice, and our nation's commitment to the rule of law sets an example for the world. We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone. Applying those laws, collecting facts, that's what determines the outcome of an investigation. Nothing more and nothing less. The prosecutors in my office are among the most talented and experienced in the Department of Justice. They have investigated this case hewing to the highest ethical standards, and they will continue to do so as this case proceeds. It's very important for me to note that the defendants in this case must be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. To that end, my office will seek a speedy trial in this matter, consistent with the public interest and the rights of the accused. We very much look forward to presenting our case to a jury of citizens in the Southern District of Florida. In conclusion, I would like to thank the dedicated public servants of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, with whom my office is conducting this investigation and who work tirelessly every day upholding the rule of law in our country. I'm deeply proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. Thank you very much.
Why Florida, sir? Why did you decide to bring the case in Florida?
Jack Smith taking no questions. We were told ahead of time that he wouldn't, but making about a 2.5 minute statement there, defending the integrity of his team and those who have worked on this case, saying that strongly defending his team, saying there is one set of laws and they apply to everyone, referring to the former president, and inviting people to read the document in full, and saying that violation of security laws puts our country at risk. Notably, he did not speak to the narrative or the evidence that's contained in today's release. Danny, let me start with you. Your reaction to what you just heard.
No surprises. Chuck Rosenberg said it. I think we all knew it. It was going to come out, and the textbook response here is, here's the indictment, look at it, my work is done. Thank the men and women of the FBI who contributed, any other agencies that contributed, and move on. No questions, so no surprises from Jack Smith here. He did his speaking, his team did their speaking, and law enforcement all spoke through this multiple-page indictment, which lays out a lot of detail, far more detail than you need in a federal indictment. I mean, the fact that they would include photographs and all of the information that they did sends a message. And the message is, we believe we have the goods.
He knows his every word is being scrutinized, his every movement. This is the first time we have ever heard him speak since he was appointed last year. And it's interesting to me to note just his affect, his disposition. It's solemn. He wanted everyone to understand the scope and the gravity of what's at stake here, emphasizing that this is about what's critical for the safety and security for the United States.
I think this is the last we'll hear of him until trial.
I bet so. Yeah, I think that he wanted to get something out obviously right now because there is going to be this delay until the indictment is, actually presented for his arraignment on Tuesday, and there's a lot of time to fill. And I think he felt the need to actually stand up there and represent the department in that time.
All right, well, let me bring back former U.S. Attorney and senior FBI official Chuck Rosenberg. Chuck, he talked about his office will seek a speedy trial. We hear that term all the time, speedy trial. What does that look like in practicality?
Sure, great question. So there are references to speedy trial both in the statutes of the United States and in the Constitution of the United States. And both sides, the defendant and the government, are entitled to a speedy trial. The government's case never gets better with age. Danny is a very good defense attorney, and he would tell you that the more time he has as a defense attorney, the more the advantage slightly begins to shift in his direction. The government would tell you the opposite. They have done their investigation, they have dotted their I's, they have crossed their T's. I should add, by the way, Lester, every word in that indictment was fly-spec. No word goes into that indictment unless the government has a document, an email, a text message, a witness who can attest to the veracity of those words. But over time, if you don't get a speedy trial, memories fade, witnesses may become reluctant to testify. Other bad things can happen to degrade a government's case. So Jack Smith wants a speedy trial. He's ready. The indictment demonstrates that. Mr. Trump may have a different motive. It will be up to the judge to decide when this case is tried, and hopefully we'll keep it on a good track to trial.
Well, the former president, certainly has the right, I'm sure you'd agree, to take all legal options that he has, but he also has a reputation for getting a way to kick the can down the road and lengthen out the process. Are there many avenues like that afforded to him in a federal prosecution such as this?
That's a great question, because most of his can kicking down the road, Lester, occurred in civil trials and in state court. And having practiced as a federal prosecutor as a criminal prosecutor in federal court, I can tell you that it is a very different environment. The federal judges in front of whom I appeared ran very tight courtrooms, adhered strictly to the schedules they set. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to kick cans down the road. Now, look, a case will also be delayed on occasion because of its complexities, and on occasion because of its motions, and possibly because there is a interlocutory or interim appeal to an appellate court challenging a judge's ruling. All of those things can introduce delay. But by and large, criminal cases in federal court move with a degree of alacrity that you simply don't find in civil cases and that you often don't find in state courts.
Chuck Rosenberg, always appreciate your analysis. Thank you. That concludes this NBC News special report. We're going to hand off our coverage to my colleagues, Ellison Barber and Vicki Wynn.
As I said before, we're just listening to what's going on the outside. You've heard from the prosecution in this case, very short, I might add, that all they're looking forward to do is to bring this case to the jury and let the American citizens decide who and what is right in their case. Sometimes I think that it's just hard to understand, how did we get here? How did we get here where there is so much of the misunderstanding of Trump and the people around him? So I'm kind of nervous for him. I'm nervous for America. I'm nervous for our neighbors and friends that we know, and as far as how the relationships that we're going to have to endure when we have different opinions on this, how are we going to be able to adjust for that? And how are we going to be able to still come together as Americans? Because this is something, like we said, has never happened before. And as a family of Americans, we have other problems out there. There's countries trying to kill us, trying to blow us up. And so these documents as to what our state of protection is kind of makes me wonder, if we have vulnerabilities out there as a country, we don't want nobody to know our vulnerabilities because that might be you or I. Maybe they can't protect where I stay. Maybe they can't protect where you stay. Maybe they can't protect the airspace where you are. Or maybe there's a place in the American system where there is a way in, is a way to break in. And I think that that's something that no one should be able to be allowed to, take for granted and use to their own benefit. And I don't know to what extent, because there's just no real motive in this situation as to what he was going to do. Maybe the only thing that we could think about is the fact that maybe he's just one of the big kids out there that likes to show off, But like our parents would say, if you're showing off a gun, you might get shot because the fact is, you don't know if there's a bullet in the chamber. You may see that the clip is empty or the chamber's empty, but you forgot to see that there's one stuck that's ready to go. So Trump may have made a mistake in that way. He may have made a mistake in underestimating what actually happens when you are faced against the American government. They will come after you, whether you are a small guy, big guy, or whatever. They're going to come after you with everything, and they have everything. That's why every country in the world is worried about America, because if America comes after you, they're going to be relentless. Even if they don't get you now, they're going to keep marching and marching and marching and marching until they get you. Whether it's Iran, whether it's Russia, whether it's China, whether it's small countries, they all understand that particular drive of the American people and the American justice system. And when you're a part of that, and I think Trump is trying to figure out if he can be the person that's going to be able to be the guy that can beat that. It's not easy. And I will say it's not easy. It's never done because America will always get their man, and even if they find him in a hole. So I really see that is where we are today, and I'm much nervous about that. And I wish that there was some other way for that. So let's listen to some other things that's going on out there.
You have Donald Trump getting a judge who he appointed. You have jurors in the Southern District of Florida who would be likely more receptive to an argument from Donald Trump than maybe a Washington, D.C. jury. So it is very relevant as to where this is happening.
And just to cut through to underscore that point, Dan, what you're essentially saying is Jack Smith knows that. He could have made the case to bring this case in the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C. Instead, they have proceeded by bringing the case to the Southern District of Florida, knowing that perhaps had they not done that, the Trump team would have argued to bring it there anyway. So in doing so, they took it to Florida without even the Trump team having to make that request. And he pointed out today, read the indictment. He told the American people, read those 49 pages. You'll understand, he hopes, that was his message, the gravity of what they've uncovered here.
Yeah, and I think that there are two things at play. Number one is it's probably the right legal decision to do it in Florida, even though, again, federal prosecutors do have some leeway, some arguments to make about why they can bring a case in one place instead of another case. But in a case where the world is watching, the last thing that the special counsel would want is for them to lose a big hearing, or even, lo and behold, the case to get dismissed because they brought it in the wrong venue. So they clearly decided it is just not worth it. Let's take the hit that the jury pool and the potential judges may be a little better for Donald Trump in South Florida, but obviously they feel very confident in the case no matter where the venue is.
Dan Abrams, we appreciate it as always. I want to take this now to Florida, where this will play out starting Tuesday afternoon, 3 p.m., when the former president has been asked to appear to face these federal criminal charges. Again, the first time this has ever happened. We're all witnessing this together, and I want to bring in Aaron Katursky, our senior investigative reporter. And Aaron, take us through what the American public will see come Tuesday.
We're not going to see much, David. The former president is due here Tuesday afternoon, and when he arrives, he will be formally placed under arrest. He will be booked and processed, and then he is due on the 13th floor of the building behind me to go before a judge and enter his plea to these 37 counts. Based on his reaction to the charges so far, we assume that plea is going to be not guilty, and that will begin the speedy trial clock that Jack Smith talked about to try to get this case to some kind of resolution. How quickly it can be done, who knows? In prior cases, delay tactics have been a hallmark of the Trump legal strategy, but he is going to be working with new lawyers because the two lawyers of his that were handling this case resigned today following news of the indictment. David, we're told that security preparations began just after 7 o'clock this morning to make sure that the grounds here are going to be prepared for Trump's arrival. We've seen a number of federal and local officers patrolling here today and making the necessary logistical and security arrangements because the word of this case, just like the indictment in New York, touched off a lot of chatter online, some of it violent in nature, some of it threatening. I thought, too, it was noteworthy that Jack Smith, the special counsel, paid tribute to the men and women of the Justice Department, his team, and the FBI, because those are the very people that came under threat when Trump's estate in West Palm Beach was raided back in August. So the authorities here are taking no chances, David, and when the former president arrives here on Tuesday, it will be a secure location. But there are no cameras in federal court, and so we are not even going to see him entering the 13th floor hallway. He will come and go in a motorcade, and that may be all we see here, David.
Aaron, another follow-up for you, and I know that for viewers watching us at home, they don't need me to tell them. Everyone understands, no matter where you stand politically and what your opinion is about all this, the gravity of this case, far more significant than what we witnessed play out here in Manhattan in the hush money case. I mean to diminish the case, but again, these are very different things. The gravity of what we're witnessing these last 24 hours, much more significant. The federal level criminal charges, the first time we've ever seen this happen. But one key sort of technical difference, Aaron, that I wanted to laser in on is I remember when we were on the air and you were reporting in real time on the Manhattan hush money case, the former president appearing in court, and there was that pause, that delay that we all were sort of on the air waiting. That was when he was actually reading in great detail the indictment in that case, the list of charges. It would seem what Jack Smith has done today is to try to preempt this sort of political vacuum, the conversation that would have taken place over the next several days, all the way until next Tuesday, had he not come before the cameras like he did just moments ago with this brief statement, and had he not issued this 49-page speaking indictment, is what they call it, to really lay this out in great detail to the American people, to try to knock down that vacuum, if you will. Obviously, there'll be all of the punditry that you cannot stop, but at least one key difference is the facts, as one side sees it so far, have been laid out in a way that we did not see in the previous indictment.
That's right, David, and it does give the special counsel a chance to have the American public digest this several days before the former president makes his initial appearance in court for his arraignment to enter that not guilty plea. It also, frankly, David, allows the former president to start thinking of a defense, not even necessarily a legal defense, but a political defense. And we've already seen that start to take shape as he's spoken out on social media and as he undoubtedly will this weekend on the campaign trail. And so it does give the special counsel something of a counterweight. Once he arrives here, his processing then could go quite quickly. Whether he's fingerprinted and photographed, we're not sure. Mugshots in the federal system are not released. We're not sure if one will be necessary. And then he is, in all likelihood, going to appear in court very quickly. Where he will be processed is across the street from the main courthouse here behind me. All of these buildings are connected underground, so in all likelihood, we will not see the former president outside at all during his arraignment on Tuesday, David.
And Aaron, just remind our viewers, if you will, again, there's always so much talk about political strategy when it comes to Donald Trump. For years, even before he became the president, during the Trump administration, and then thereafter. But putting political strategy aside, just remind everyone, if you will, the weight of the charges that have been listed in great detail here, these 37 counts. Political strategy will be very important, I'm sure, to the Trump team, but he faces a significant legal threat here. The legal threat here, he'll have to take into account, certainly. It's much more serious than any sort of political strategy.
I was talking to one attorney who had been involved in consulting with former President Trump at one point, asked him what he thought about the indictment, and he just sent me a message to say it's bad. And you heard Special Counsel Jack Smith outline why. He said violations of national security law put the country at risk. And in the view of the Special Counsel, the charged conduct here seems to have put the country at risk. The former president's supporters and defenders may not agree with that, but the Special Counsel believes he's not only on firm footing with the law, but has the intent of former President Trump to willfully disregard it behind him. And that is the case that he says he looks forward to presenting to the citizens here in South Florida when the time comes.
And again, a presumption of innocence. We have said that repeatedly in our coverage, and you heard Jack Smith say that himself. Dan Abrams making that point as well. But again, Aaron Katersky, the potential punishment here, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves at all, but when you look at the seriousness of these charges, the potential punishment here could be significant.
That's yet another.
Yes, you know, that's one of the things that I had to step in on that right there, guys, because I think that we really don't understand that how serious this is for his family. You know, one of the things that we need to contemplate is if the fact that Trump ever goes there, if he is ever brought into the place where he has to go to prison for this in any way, all of the luxury of his life was put into this very simple place of control. And I think that that's something we all have to think about in our life. Let's listen to a little bit of this.
The advisor who's also included in this indictment, one count he now faces. And I just want to ask you about this because in the indictment, prosecutors describe another text. We were talking about one there in particular from Walt Nata. There's another.
Sorry about that, guys. Seemed like I had a little malfunction. We'll have to get back on finding out what the heck went wrong on that. So, but
or with the new covers for the boxes, that's Monday morning. Can we get new box covers before giving these to him on Monday? They have too much writing on them. But again, this talks about, it's an allegation here, and obviously the president will make his case, but the allegation here, and this is just one of so many descriptions of interactions with the former president, is that he was heavily involved with these boxes, with these documents, fully aware.
And with directing his employees, in that case, Walt Nata, and also his attorneys, to conceal these documents, to prevent prosecutors from getting their hands on them, even after they had been subpoenaed. There's another a section of the indictment that talks about Walt Nata being directed to move some of the boxes to the Trump airplane in June of 2022. So before before that search warrant at Mar-a-Lago was exercised, that was in August. There were some of these documents that were boxes that were moved to the Trump airplane for Trump apparently to take with him when he went up north, as he does for the summer, to his club in Bedminster. Clearly, and by the way, one thing that's interesting there that I'm sure is catching Trump's attention is they say the reason they know that is from surveillance footage, from the surveillance cameras, the security cameras at Mar-a-Lago. So you see that the prosecutors have had access to the images and the messages on his close personal aide's cell phone, also access to the video from his own security cameras at Mar-a-Lago, they can develop a pretty clear picture of what happened here. One other note, David, on Walt Nauta, he was the valet in the White House, a Navy veteran. He came up in the January 6th investigation because he was the person who first informed Donald Trump that there was an attack underway at the U.S. Capitol. He was the person that greeted Trump in the Oval Office when Trump returned from the speech he had that morning, and told him that he was unable to watch his speech because the television coverage had been interrupted to show the attack on the Capitol. So he's somebody who has had a very close proximity to Donald Trump at the center of both of these investigations, the one we're talking about now, the documents investigation, but also the January 6th investigation.
And just to drive home this point that you've made, John, because you have been to Mar-a-Lago, when you hear about boxes of documents in a ballroom, a bedroom, a public bathroom, documents being moved to the Trump plane, you bring up the surveillance video that they talk about in this 49-page indictment. And just to be clear, that surveillance video does include a portion of time after the subpoena to say, look, we know there's more here, turn it over. And essentially, authorities have been told we did turn everything over. That's why that surveillance video is key, correct?
Yes. In fact, what I described going to the plane was when the FBI and representatives from the Justice Department had visited Mar-a-Lago to meet with the attorneys to go over what documents had been in their possession. This is before the investigation turned to a more hostile phase where they had to actually get a search warrant to come in and do that surprise search in August of Mar-a-Lago. And those boxes were moved just as Trump is meeting with the FBI to say, okay, here's what I have. You can take a look with my attorney's presence. Well, some of those boxes, according to this indictment, had been moved by his close personal aide to his airplane, and that process was captured, at least part of it, by those surveillance cameras.
John Carl with us here this afternoon. John, thank you as always. John Santucci, who has covered Donald Trump, the presidency, the candidate before he won the election in 2016. And John, you've been in touch with sources at Bedminster, which is where the former president is right now, with those surrounding him, reading through the indictment. I wonder, and maybe you don't know this, but was he watching Jack Smith?
You'd have to assume as much. I'll be honest, David, I don't know. I can tell you most people that I've been talking to have said reading, trying to digest this, trying to figure it out. And also you can see it from the comments Donald Trump has made in his social media platform. He is fired up. He is angry. He is attacked. We're not going to read the statements because they're full of misinformation, but he has attacked the special counsel, attacked President Joe Biden. He is in full war mode, as one person said. But absolutely, you have to imagine Donald Trump taking this all in, watching it. We know he is a consumer of news just the way you and I are. But I will say, David, one thing that's been interesting, there's a word that multiple sources that are still close to former President Trump text me, and it's the same word, sad. And the other one has been pretty common, actually. Two people wrote me, unnecessary. Many people writing, why would he do this? Why would he take it to them? And others saying the whole thing is just stupid. But the other observation that I got from one long-time, now former aide to the president, still keeps in touch with him, the person said to me, I can hear his voice when they read through the indictment. You could hear him saying, come here, let me show you this. And the person made the point to me, that wasn't just a one-time thing. Donald Trump would do that all the time in the White House, in Trump Tower. David, he did it to you and me multiple times, right? Let me show you something. That's the Donald Trump act, and clearly that is the act that has gotten him in big trouble here, David.
And some of your sources that you're speaking to, I'm sure not necessarily at Bedminster right now, those who are telling you unnecessary, for example. Let me just ask you, are they talking about, why not just turn the classified documents back over to authorities when they ask for them?
Yeah, I think they're talking about both things, right? It's unnecessary. Why did you take all of this stuff? I mean, many people over the years have made the comment to me about Donald Trump, the hoarder, that he has kept things. I remember being in the 26th floor of Trump Tower and seeing the stacks of things that were just accumulated, and you couldn't even find a room to stand, actually, when you're in the room. It's rather hard because it's full of magazines, clippings, photos he's kept. Memorabilia. I mean, Pierre used the word earlier, and I agree with it. Trophies, things he wants to show off to people. But the unnecessary of it, David, you hit it right there. It's like, why not just give it back? And I remember asking a longtime aide that after the raid, because we could tell that they had communications back and forth with the special counsel and federal prosecutors at that point. And the aide made the observation to me, you know him, when he's told to do something, what is he going to do? The complete opposite. He's not going to give it back if somebody tells him to.
John Santucci, our thanks to you, John. I'm bringing Mary Bruce at the White House, our chief White House correspondent. Mary, have we heard anything from the Biden administration at this point? And obviously the second follow-up here is you have a lot of Americans saying, well, what about Mike Pence? Classified documents were found at his house. What about the President Biden, documents found in one of his former offices and at one of his homes? Those are questions the White House will face as well.
Yeah, David, first of all, no, we have not heard the president comment on this. He has been asked about this indictment broadly, and he has made very clear on 2 occasions today that he is not going to be commenting on this. This White House essentially wants nothing to do with this. They are very aware that the former president and that his supporters are arguing that this is politically motivated. This president, Joe Biden, has vowed to protect the independence of the Justice Department, and he knows that anything he says or does or comment that he may make on this indictment, on these charges, could be used to try and undermine this investigation and this case and be used as a political cudgel against him and in this election. As for your second question, we have, of course, seen already Donald Trump's attorneys and his supporters, the former president himself, on his social media posts, trying to draw an equivalency, asking, essentially arguing that there's a double standard here. Why aren't we seeing the same kind of focus on the special counsel investigation into Joe Biden's handling of classified documents? There are some very critical and important differences between these cases. So let's make it very clear here. First of all, Joe Biden has said that he was completely unaware that these documents were maintained and held on to, that they were found in his former private office and in his private residence. He said he was surprised to learn they were there. And secondly, perhaps more importantly, when you come to the comparisons here, Joe Biden and this White House and his team have been completely cooperative with the authorities. They have said that the second they discovered any classified documents in their possession, they immediately called the National Archives. They turned everything over. Going forward from that point, they also cooperated with authorities on their searches of his residences, of his office, to make sure that they were being fully cooperative with this investigation. And they have cooperated with the special counsel's request, with Robert Hur's request of his investigation since then. That is a very sharp contrast to the allegations in this indictment against the former president, who, as we have been discussing, knowingly, allegedly took documents with him, willfully concealed them from authorities, and conspired to obstruct justice, allegedly. David.
Mary Bruce at the White House. Mary, thank you. And just one more note on this before we let you go back to regular programming. And again, we'll work on this all afternoon for you for World News Tonight. But one of the things that Jack Smith said, I mentioned this earlier, he invited everyone at home to read the indictment in full to understand the scope, the gravity, in his words, of the crimes charged. He went on to say that men and women of the United States intelligence community, our armed forces, dedicate their lives to protecting our nation. Our laws that protect national defense information are critical to the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced. And with that, I want to bring in Rachel Scott for the final question here, because Rachel is already in Iowa. She's covering this race for president. And of course, the Republican field is already quite large. This is where the political strategy comes in for all of the other Republican candidates, Rachel, because they are reading what you and I have read here this afternoon. It's spelled out in this 49-page indictment. We're talking about classified documents that involve U.S. nuclear capabilities, the risks that the U.S. military and the U.S. as a country face militarily, whether or not we could come under attack, what we would do if we did come under attack. A number of these highly sensitive documents, and again, the reporting that we had even before the indictment today about the alleged plan that was talked about, potential plan during the Trump years to attack Iran. Again, all of this included in the indictment, the scope of what these classified documents sort of covered. So having said that, I know that you and the political team have reached out to every single one of these Republican campaigns this afternoon to ask them, are they comfortable with a former president holding on to classified information, in particular, the information that involves our nuclear capabilities, our nuclear secrets, our military capabilities, and the potential threats we face as a country?
David, our political team has put that question to every single Republican campaign today, asking them if they believe it is appropriate for the former president to have and hold on to these sensitive documents, including U.S. nuclear capabilities, and whether they believe the indictment is justified. So far, words still trying to come in at this point because a lot of these candidates are doing what the former president is doing, what you and I are doing, what the American people are doing, and they are reading through this indictment for themselves. What we do know is that these Republican candidates so far have tried to walk a very fine line, not quick to criticize the former president. His own former vice president, Mike Pence, told me that he does believe there needs to be new leadership, but he also said that an indictment would further divide the country. He called the calls to sort of suspend Donald Trump's campaign premature. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, former prosecutor himself, wants to read through the details of this, and we will see what he has to say. He says that no one is above the law. What is clear, David, at this point is that Donald Trump can still continue his third campaign. He can still run for president. He's fundraising off of this. He has campaign events tomorrow. What is not clear is whether or not anything that is in this indictment, whether or not any of these counts that the former president is facing is going to change the way the Republican Party feels about him, the way Republican voters feel about him, or what Republican candidates are saying about him, David.
Yeah, that's the central.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to talk a little bit about what we've been hearing so far and listening. Like I said, we're going to listen to some of these people and programs that are out there talking about this particular issue with Trump. And I just want to say, as the last part you heard, we're all going to read it and we're all going to understand it. Like I told you, I printed it out myself just so that I can read through it and get an idea of what's going on. But we have to come together, man. We have to take away all of the hate and misunderstanding of each other. Because if we can sit back and allow someone to have this type of information and feel like it's theirs because they used to be in office, it's let's decide on that then, okay? Because when you get a president that's not white, or a president that's a different color, or a president from a different country that's or not necessarily from a different country, I shouldn't say that, but a president that's have affiliations with a country other than the country that it was born in, later on, in life, we're not going to always have, presidents of one race or another. It's going to be multiracial presidents. You don't know where they're tied to. Do you want them to go home with all American secret and spread it out to their country that they came from, or their family came from? Would you want that to be a part of the gift that they have, that they can do? Put your family at risk, put your grandkids at risk, or even actually put the country at risk as a whole. So we really have a lot to think about when we just think of it. It's a lot bigger than Trump. It has to do with America, and where do we stand as Americans and being able to decipher what is actually warranted for someone that was a former leader or a former position holder in our country, and what they can have when they leave, and who they can tell it to. Can they sell it? Can they get some money for it? Can they share it? Can they just talk about it? Can they just go on the air? Can they declassify it? We as Americans have to set the standard. We as American people have to set the standard. Right now we're divided. Right now the division of what's going on is this is crazy. So that's my opinion. Okay, it's crazy because I don't think that we would want even our kids to be running around talking about what's going on in your house, what clothes you wear, what things you do, all of the different things that we do or you do or your family have, out in the streets. It's the same concept. So let's think about this let's take this in. And I know I probably gave you a lot more than you wanted to listen to, but I wanted to just get you to be able to see what's coming across the airwaves and how that's being done. So they allow you to decipher. So this is KF and JF, LLC, and KF and JF podcast. I want you to be able to take a look at the indictment and read it and let me know what you think. Have a good day and pray for us, America.